Verstappen scares his rivals after a new warning. The FIA makes a decision on more sprint races, and Zak responds to Horner's comeback, do consider subbing. Let's get into the latest F1 news. What's up, Formula One fans? Picture this. You're Max Verstappen, sitting on top of the racing world with 4 championship titles, and everyone's asking the same burning question. Will you stay with Red Bull for your entire career? Well, buckle up, because his manager just dropped some serious truth bombs that could change everything we think we know about Max's future. Here's the deal that nobody saw coming. Raymond Vermeulen, the man behind Max's career decisions, just laid down the ultimate ultimatum to Red Bull. And trust me, this isn't your typical contract negotiation drama. We're talking about the future of the most dominant driver in modern Formula One history. Let me paint you the complete picture of what's really happening behind the scenes. Max has been crystal clear about his dream scenario. El God, spending his entire Formula One journey with just one team. Think about it for a second. In a sport where drivers jump ship faster than you can say pit stop, completing an entire career with one organization would be absolutely legendary. We're talking Michael Schumacher with Ferrari levels of iconic partnership. But here's where things get spicy. Vermeulen isn't just nodding along with pretty words about loyalty and heritage. He's playing hardball with one of the most powerful teams in motorsport. The message is simple but devastating. Give Max championship-winning machinery, or watch him walk away to somewhere that will. Now, why is this conversation happening right now? The timing couldn't be more critical. We're staring down the barrel of the biggest regulation shakeup Formula One has seen in years. The 2026 season isn't just another year on the calendar. It's a complete reset button for the entire sport. New chassis rules, overhauled engine regulations, and electrical energy management becoming more crucial than ever before. Think about what this means for team hierarchies. Right now, Red Bull sits comfortably at the top of the mountain. But history tells us that major regulation changes can flip the entire competitive order upside down. Remember when Braun GP came out of nowhere to dominate in 2009? Or how about when Mercedes suddenly became unstoppable after the hybrid era began in 2014? These regulation changes don't just shuffle the deck, they completely redeal the cards. Vermeulen knows this better than anyone. He's been watching the Formula One landscape shift for years, making calculated moves that have positioned Max perfectly for success. Back in 2016, they jumped from Toro Rosso to Red Bull. Then came the engine switch from Renault to Honda. Each decision was about maximizing Max's chances of winning, and now we're facing potentially the biggest decision point yet. Here's what makes this situation absolutely fascinating from a strategic standpoint. Red Bull isn't just dealing with external regulation changes, they're also making their biggest internal gamble ever. For 2026, they're ditching their current engine supplier and going it alone with their own power unit, developed in partnership with Ford. This is either going to be a masterstroke that cements their dominance, or it could be the mistake that opens the door for Max to consider other options. The Mercedes rumors that keep swirling aren't helping Red Bull's position either. George Russell stirred the pot recently by claiming there were ongoing conversations between Max and Mercedes. While Max quickly shut down those rumors and reaffirmed his commitment through 2026, the underlying message is clear that other top teams are constantly watching for any crack in the Red Bull relationship. But let's talk about what Vermeulen really revealed in his most telling comments. He admitted there's a worst-case scenario where Max could end up with uncompetitive machinery in 2026. That's not just acknowledging risk, that's publicly pressuring Red Bull to get their development priorities straight. When your star driver's manager is openly discussing the possibility of failure, that sends shockwaves through the entire organization. The puzzle analogy Vermeulen used is particularly revealing. Formula One's success isn't just about having a fast engine or good chassis, it's about how all the pieces fit together. Which engineers will Red Bull recruit? How will their new power unit integrate with their chassis philosophy? Can they maintain their aerodynamic advantage under completely different regulations? These are million-dollar questions with no guaranteed answers. What's really impressive is how Max himself is approaching this uncertainty. Instead of getting caught up in contract negotiations or political maneuvering, he's laser-focused on preparation. He wants Red Bull to nail the 2026 regulations from day one, maintaining their competitive edge through the transition. This isn't just confidence, it's the mindset of someone who knows they can win with the right tools. The family dynamic adds another layer to this story. Jos Verstappen isn't just Max's father, he's an integral part of the decision-making process. Having a former Formula One driver's perspective in these conversations brings invaluable insight about team dynamics, competitive cycles, and career timing that most managers simply can't provide. So, what does all this mean for Max's ultimate legacy? If he stays with Red Bull and they nail the 2026 regulations, we could witness one of the greatest single-team careers in motorsport history. But if Red Bull stumbles and Max has to make a move, it won't be seen as disloyalty. It'll be viewed as a champion making the tough decisions necessary to keep winning. The bottom line is this: Max Verstappen's future isn't just about money or politics or even team loyalty. It's about one thing: winning championships. And his manager just made sure everyone knows that Red Bull better deliver the goods or risk losing the greatest talent of this generation. The countdown to 2026 starts now, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Hold on to your racing helmets, because the Formula One world just got shaken up in the most unexpected way possible. Christian Horner, the mastermind behind Red Bull's decade-long dominance, just walked away with a staggering $100 million golden parachute. And his bitter rival Zak Brown has some fascinating thoughts about what happens next. Picture this: after more than 20 years of calling the shots at Red Bull, Christian Horner gets the boot following the British Grand Prix in July. But here's where it gets juicy. Instead of fading into the sunset, reports are swirling that this settlement deal positions him perfectly for a shocking comeback in the 2026 season. And his longtime nemesis at McLaren isn't staying quiet about it. Let's dive deep into why this story matters, way more than just another executive shakeup. Horner isn't just any team principal. He's the architect behind 6 Constructors' Championships and 8 Drivers' titles, split perfectly between Sebastian Vettel's early dominance and Max Verstappen's current reign of terror. When someone with that kind of track record suddenly becomes available, the entire paddock takes notice. But here's what makes this absolutely fascinating. The relationship between Horner and McLaren's Zak Brown has been anything but friendly. These two have been trading verbal punches for the past 18 months, as McLaren emerged as the most serious threat to Red Bull's stranglehold on the sport. Brown publicly branded Red Bull's racing style under Horner as downright nasty, while Horner was caught on Netflix's Drive to Survive, calling Brown exactly what you'd expect him to say behind closed doors. Now, with Horner potentially eyeing a return in 2026, Brown's response reveals something fascinating about the psychology of Formula One leadership. Instead of celebrating his rival's departure, Brown actually acknowledges Horner's stellar career achievements and admits that different characters make the sport more exciting. This isn't just diplomatic politeness, it's strategic thinking. Brown understands something crucial about Formula One that casual fans might miss. The drama happening off the track is just as important as the racing itself. He points to what he calls the Netflix effect, MIT. Fans don't just want to see cars going fast. They want to know the personalities, the rivalries, and the human stories behind the helmets. Horner's potential return would inject exactly that kind of compelling narrative back into the sport. Think about what Horner might do next. Industry insiders believe he's eyeing a team ownership position similar to Toto Wolff's setup at Mercedes, where Wolff serves as both team principal and owns a significant stake in the operation. This wouldn't just be Horner returning as an employee. This would be Horner coming back as an owner with serious skin in the game. The timing couldn't be more intriguing. 2026 represents a massive regulatory reset for Formula One, with new technical regulations that could completely reshape the competitive landscape. Starting fresh with new rules would give someone like Horner the perfect opportunity to prove that his success wasn't just about inheriting Adrian Newey's brilliant designs or having the deepest pockets. But let's talk about what this really means for the sports ecosystem. Right now, Toto Wolff has become the longest-serving team principal following Horner's departure. The paddock dynamics have fundamentally shifted, and Brown admits that team boss meetings have become healthier without Horner's presence. Wolff has been particularly vocal about this, describing Horner as operating under different standards than other team principals. However, Brown makes a crucial point about authenticity. He admits he has friends in the pit lane and some that aren't friends, but argues that these genuine relationships and rivalries are what make Formula One compelling. Fans can sense when drama is manufactured versus when it's real, and the Horner-Brown dynamic was undeniably authentic. The financial implications of Horner's settlement also reveal how much Formula One has evolved as a business. $100 million for a departure settlement shows just how valuable these leadership positions have become. Formula One teams are now worth billions. McLaren recently valued at $5 billion, and the people running them are compensated accordingly. What makes this situation even more fascinating is that Horner isn't currently in active discussions about a return. He's focusing on family time, recently spotted enjoying a break in Scotland with his wife Gary. This suggests any comeback would be carefully planned and strategic, rather than desperate or rushed. The psychological warfare aspect can't be ignored either. By staying visible and maintaining his options, Horner keeps himself relevant in a sport that moves incredibly fast. His potential return creates uncertainty for current team principals and could influence driver market decisions as early as next year. Looking ahead to 2026, imagine the storylines. If Horner does return, the man who built Red Bull's empire facing off against the team that replaced him, potentially going head-to-head with Brown's McLaren operation that finally found the speed to challenge his old squad. The drama writes itself. Brown's measured response to these rumors shows the evolution of his own leadership style. Rather than celebrating a rival's departure, he's acknowledging that great competitors make everyone better. That kind of maturity could serve McLaren well as they try to maintain their current momentum against formidable opposition. The Christian Horner saga represents everything compelling about modern Formula One: massive financial stakes, personal rivalries, strategic maneuvering, and the constant possibility that nothing is ever really finished in this sport. The Formula One world is buzzing with controversy, and it's not about what happens on track. Picture this. You're watching your favorite F1 weekend. But instead of the traditional format you love, everything feels rushed, artificial, and frankly exhausting for everyone involved. That's the reality we might be heading toward, and the man in charge of keeping the sport safe has some serious concerns. Mohammed bin Sulayem, the president of the FIA, just dropped a bombshell about Formula One's plans to potentially double their sprint race weekends. While F1 commercial boss Stefano Domenicali is pushing hard for more action-packed weekends to keep fans entertained, Ben Sulayem is pumping the brakes with two critical issues that nobody seems to be talking about. Let me paint you a picture of what's really happening behind the scenes. Sprint races first appeared in 2021 as an experiment during just 3 weekends. Fast forward to today, and we're already up to 6 sprint weekends per season. But here's where it gets crazy. F1 is seriously considering jumping to 12 sprint weekends starting in 2027. That's literally doubling what we have now. The drivers aren't happy. Esteban Ocon has gone on record calling the increase artificial, essentially saying it's manufacturing excitement instead of letting the sport breathe naturally. Even more concerning, rookie driver Gabriel Bortoleto has raised a fascinating point that nobody anticipated. Teams might actually avoid signing young drivers because sprint weekends only have 1 practice session. Think about that for a second. Less practice time means teams need drivers who can adapt instantly, potentially shutting out the next generation of talent. But here's where Ben Sulayem's concerns become absolutely crucial, and they're issues that could fundamentally change how Formula One operates. First, let's talk about the human cost. Ben Sulayem's primary concern centers on his own people, the FIA staff who make every race weekend possible. These are the officials inspecting cars, monitoring regulations, managing penalties, and ensuring driver safety. During a normal race weekend, their workload is already intense. But sprint weekends? That's a completely different beast. Here's something most fans never consider: parc fermé regulations. In a standard weekend, cars are locked down once, preventing teams from making changes between qualifying and the race. But sprint weekends create multiple parc fermé periods, one between sprint qualifying and the sprint race, then another between main qualifying and the Grand Prix. Each lockdown requires FIA personnel to oversee, monitor, and enforce these complex regulations. We're talking about officials who are already working incredibly long hours, now being asked to manage additional qualifying sessions, extra races, more parc fermé periods, and increased penalty decisions. Ben Sulayem isn't just being cautious. He's looking at the practical reality of human limitations. The second issue hits even closer to home for everyone involved: travel fatigue. The current F1 calendar already maxes out at 24 races, the absolute limit set by the Concord Agreement. Team personnel are already spending enormous portions of their year living out of suitcases, jumping between time zones, and missing family events. Ben Sulayem put it perfectly when he said teams already travel extensively, questioning whether adding more complexity to these weekends truly benefits anyone. While sprint weekends don't technically add more races to the calendar, they dramatically increase the stress and intensity of existing weekends. Think about it from a mechanic's perspective. Instead of having multiple practice sessions to identify and fix problems, you get one practice session before diving straight into qualifying and racing. The pressure is enormous, the margin for error shrinks, and the mental toll becomes exhausting. What makes this debate even more interesting is the governance aspect. Formula One commercial leadership can suggest all they want, but they can't unilaterally decide to increase sprint races. Any changes must go through the F1 Commission and receive ratification from the FIA World Motorsport Council. This means Ben Sulayem's concerns aren't just opinions, they carry real weight in the decision-making process. The fan perspective adds another layer of complexity. Some spectators, especially those attending races in person, appreciate the additional on-track action that sprint weekends provide. More sessions mean more entertainment value for their ticket price. However, many longtime fans argue that sprint formats actually reduce the strategic depth that makes Formula One fascinating. Traditional race weekends allow teams to experiment during practice, develop different strategies, and create the chess match element that separates F1 from other motorsports. Sprint weekends compress this process, potentially making races more predictable rather than more exciting. What's particularly telling is how this debate reflects broader tensions within Formula One. The sport is caught between commercial pressures to constantly evolve and entertain newer audiences, while maintaining the core elements that made it special for existing fans. Ben Sulayem's position represents a crucial voice of caution in these discussions. As FIA president, he's responsible for safety, regulation enforcement, and the overall integrity of the sport. His concerns about staff burden and travel impact aren't bureaucratic complaints, they're practical considerations about the sport's long-term sustainability. The timing of this debate couldn't be more critical. With the 2026 sprint calendar already confirmed and discussions ongoing for 2027, decisions made now will shape Formula One for years to come. Ben Sulayem's willingness to speak up about these concerns suggests the FIA won't simply rubber-stamp commercial proposals without serious consideration. Whether Formula One ultimately doubles its sprint weekends remains to be seen. But Ben Sulayem has ensured that human factors, both for officials and teams, remain central to these conversations. Sometimes the most important voice in the room is the one asking whether bigger really means better. What if I told you that Adrian Newey might not be the magic bullet Aston Martin thinks he is? The legendary designer who's crafted championship-winning cars for decades just joined Aston Martin with massive expectations. But there's a hidden truth about Formula One success that could completely change everything. Picture this. You're running a company where you have to redesign your entire product every single year, update it every few weeks, and compete against the world's best engineers while millions watch your every move. That's Formula One, and it's about to get a reality check that could shake the sport to its core. Adrian Newey stands as the most decorated individual in Formula One history. We're talking about a man who's been involved in over 200 race victories and helped secure 26 combined championship titles. When Aston Martin announced his arrival as their managing technical partner this past March, the entire paddock took notice. The six-year-old genius is now working on what's expected to be called the AMR26, Aston Martin's first car under the revolutionary 2026 regulations. But here's where things get interesting, and frankly, a little controversial. Former Formula One driver Karun Chandhok recently dropped some serious truth bombs about what it really takes to succeed in this sport. According to Chandhok, Even Adrian Newey cannot transform Aston Martin into championship contenders without something crucial that many teams overlook completely. The secret ingredient isn't another star designer or a faster engine. It's what Chandhok calls a cohesive unit. Think about it this way. Everyone sees the drivers, the team principals, and occasionally the high-profile technical figures like Newey making headlines. But behind every successful Formula One operation are thousands of people who must function as one perfectly synchronized machine. This revelation becomes even more mind-blowing when you consider the insane pressures Formula One teams face. Chandhok breaks it down perfectly by comparing F1 to the automotive industry. When a car manufacturer decides to build a new vehicle, they typically have 4 years to study the market, understand their target audience, conduct surveys, move through design phases, prototyping, testing, manufacturing, and finally reach production and marketing. Formula One teams, they get 1 year to build an entirely new car, but it gets crazier. They're not just building one car and calling it done. These teams are constantly updating their machines every race or every few races. We're talking about reevaluating and improving your product every couple of months while competing at the highest level imaginable. The pressure is unlike anything in any other industry. Chandhok puts it bluntly. There's nowhere to hide in Formula One. In most businesses, you can massage financial results or present sales figures in ways that give you some wiggle room with the truth. But in racing, the stopwatch never lies. Your results are printed in black and white for everyone to see, and there's no spinning a slow lap time. This brings us back to Aston Martin's current situation. Yes, they've landed Adrian Newey, arguably the greatest aerodynamicist in Formula One history. But they've also been busy building that cohesive unit Chandhok talks about. Former Mercedes engine expert Andy Cowell has been appointed as team principal for the 2025 season. They've also secured Enrico Cardelli, the former Ferrari technical director, as their chief technical officer, after what was apparently quite a battle to get his signature. The timing couldn't be more critical. The 2026 season will mark the beginning of Aston Martin's highly anticipated technical partnership with Honda, who currently supply engines to Red Bull. This partnership, combined with Newey's expertise and the new regulatory framework, represents Aston Martin's biggest opportunity to break into the championship fight. But here's what makes this story even more compelling. Newey isn't just designing a car. He's working closely with Fernando Alonso, one of the sport's most cerebral drivers. Their collaboration could be the key that unlocks Aston Martin's potential. Alonso's experience and feedback, combined with Newey's design brilliance, creates a partnership that goes beyond just having a famous name on the payroll. The challenge facing Aston Martin reflects a broader truth about modern Formula One. The days when a single brilliant individual could single-handedly transform a team are largely behind us. Today's Formula One is about systems, processes, and hundreds of people working in perfect harmony toward a common goal. Think about Red Bull's dominance in recent years. While Adrian Newey was certainly a crucial part of their success, it was the entire organization's culture, from the factory workers to the strategists to the mechanics, that delivered those championships. When Newey leaves Red Bull for Aston Martin, he's not taking that entire ecosystem with him. This is what makes Aston Martin's project so fascinating and risky. They're betting that they can build a championship-caliber organization around Newey's brilliance. They're assembling talent from across the paddock, investing heavily in infrastructure, and preparing for what could be their defining moment in Formula One. The 2026 regulations represent a fresh start for everyone. New aerodynamic rules, new engine specifications, and new opportunities for teams to shuffle the competitive order. Aston Martin believes this is their moment to strike. But success will depend on whether they can create that cohesive unit Chandhok emphasizes. As we approach this pivotal moment in Formula One history, one thing is certain. Adrian Newey's arrival at Aston Martin is just the beginning of their story, not the end. The real test will be whether they can transform individual brilliance into collective success. The stopwatch, as always, will have the final word. What if I told you that Formula One's most powerful team is about to make a move that could reshape the entire grid? Red Bull's Helmut Marko just dropped some major hints about their next superstar, and the timing couldn't be more perfect. Right now, everyone's talking about Isack Hadjar, the young French driver who's been turning heads in his rookie season with Racing Bulls. This kid isn't just another promising talent, he's the real deal. His podium finish at the Dutch Grand Prix sent shockwaves through the paddock, and suddenly everyone's asking the same question: when will Red Bull promote him to their main team? Here's where it gets interesting. While rumors have been swirling about a potential mid-season swap with Yuki Tsunoda, Marco has revealed something fascinating about their actual timeline. The Austrian mastermind isn't rushing into anything. Instead, he's playing chess, while everyone else is playing checkers. According to Marco, the golden opportunity isn't this season or even next season. It's 2026, when Formula One undergoes its biggest regulatory overhaul in years. Think about the strategic brilliance here. These aren't just minor tweaks to the cars we're talking about. This is a complete reset of how Formula One operates. The 2026 regulations will introduce what Marco calls a completely new sort of driving. These ground effect cars will become even more complex, requiring drivers to master intricate recovery systems that demand incredible mental capacity. It's not just about having quick reflexes anymore. It's about being a technological wizard behind the wheel. This is where Hadjar's youth becomes his superpower. While established drivers will need to unlearn years of muscle memory and adapt to radically different machinery, Hadjar will be stepping into his prime with fresh eyes and an adaptable mindset. He won't be fighting old habits, he'll be building new ones from scratch. But let's talk about what makes Hadjar special beyond just timing. His relationship with his French engineer has been crucial to his development. Communication is everything in Formula One, and having that linguistic and cultural connection has accelerated his learning curve dramatically. It's the kind of detail that might seem minor, but can make the difference between good and great. The political chess game happening behind the scenes is equally fascinating. Red Bull operates a unique system where drivers aren't contracted to specific teams, but to the central organization. This gives them incredible flexibility to move pieces around the board whenever needed. We've already seen this in action with driver swaps between Red Bull Racing and Racing Bulls. Tsunoda's future adds another layer to this story. The Japanese driver has been performing well, especially with his strong showing in Baku, but Honda's move to Aston Martin could create a natural pathway for him to follow. This would clear space at Racing Bulls for another Red Bull Jr., possibly Arvid Lindblad, creating a domino effect throughout their driver program. What's remarkable is how Marco is managing expectations while building for the future. He's not making promises he can't keep, or rushing decisions that could backfire. Instead, he's acknowledging that Hadjar is still learning and developing, which shows the kind of patience that builds championship-winning programs. The timing strategy reveals Red Bull's long-term thinking. Rather than making reactive moves based on current performance, they're positioning themselves for maximum impact when the sport undergoes its biggest transformation. It's the difference between tactical thinking and strategic mastery. Consider the pressure dynamics at play. Promoting a young driver mid-season, or even for the following season, puts enormous pressure on them to perform immediately in familiar machinery, but introducing them during a regulatory reset levels the playing field. Everyone will be learning together, which could actually benefit a sharp, adaptable mind like Hadjar's. The 2026 regulations will also emphasize the mental side of racing more than ever before. Drivers will need to process complex energy recovery data while making split-second decisions at incredible speeds. This cognitive demand plays directly into the strengths of younger drivers who grew up in the digital age. Red Bull's approach also reflects their confidence in their development system. They're not panicking about immediate results. They're building for sustained success. This patience and strategic thinking is what separates elite organizations from those that chase short-term gains. The broader implications for Formula One are significant. If Red Bull's timing proves perfect, they could enter the new regulatory era with a driver lineup that's perfectly suited for the demands of modern Formula One. Max Verstappen's experience combined with Hadjar's fresh perspective could be a devastating combination. As we watch this story unfold, remember that the best moves in Formula One often happen away from the spotlight. While everyone focuses on current results, the smartest teams are already planning for the future. Red Bull's patient approach with Hadjar might just be the move that defines the next era of the sport. The question isn't whether Hadjar will get his chance. It's whether Red Bull's timing will prove as masterful as their strategy suggests.